They showed us her face. They showed us the face.
They actually showed you. They showed you too. They showed you her face, and they also showed the face at like the end game monster.
I did not like it.
Mm-hmm. It gave me some clarity. Our subtitles the first time we watched it also overlapped with the sound subtitles, so sometimes I couldn't read what was happening.
Oh no!
It was like, no, grandma. Door opens. We're just like, well, I don't know, but the door is open.
Creepy nonetheless.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well, but not in October. Welcome to our, what did we say we were going to call this? The spooky...
Fall Freakout.
That's it. Welcome to our Fall Freakout special for October, where we, instead of talking about the stories that move us, we're highlighting some of East Asia's and especially Taiwan's scary films, the horror films that may not have crossed your radar or may feel inaccessible to you because of a language barrier. So we're going to be splitting this up 50-50, where I talk about a ghost story to Michelle.
Hello.
Who's terrified of ghosts.
Yes.
And she will next week be telling me a grisly story because I hate body horror and true crime and all of that kind of stuff. I actually can't stand it.
And I dig it.
Yeah. So we're going to be trading off, making each other feel bad, and hopefully just giving you all the joy of getting to know what a scary movie is about. So how do you feel, Michelle?
Well, even earlier in the office, Amanda showed
a picture. I showed you the
one
still from, like, if you rent the movie online.
Yeah. And I don't like ghosts so much that I then had to go to the bathroom and was avoiding all reflective surfaces because, you know.
I think that a reflective surface would have helped a lot of people in this movie, but we're going to get to that in a second. But first, what I want to start off with is there any cultural context you need to understand these movies, especially like since we live here in East Asia, is there something we could tell you? And so there's two things right off the bat. The first one for this movie is the idea of the spirit world actually plays a lot in like Taiwanese mythology, which is that you could actually like kind of fall into the spirit world or get drawn into it at any point in time.
Yes.
And this plays a big pivotal part in the movie, but when you're in there, like you're seeing and hearing things that aren't real, but they can really hurt you. Mm-hmm. And so that's a thing that is it's a pretty common belief. The other one is like actually just going to be like right at the beginning of the movie. So I'm going to get into a summary of the tag-along. The Chinese is 紅衣小女孩, the little girl in red.
Yes.
This movie starts off by literally giving up the ghost. It tells you exactly what it is. This is a Taiwanese folklore belief. It has nothing to do with like China, Japan, any colonial powers, called Emotion, who is a spirit that lives in the forest. They look like monkeys or children. And they use your guilt, something you feel guilty about, to eat up your mind. And that's where we start.
Right off
it says that right on the screen, so you know where we're dealing with emotion. It starts off, there's a heavy green filter, Twilight style, but it's green. Over everything in this movie, that filter never leaves. We're there. There is an old lady walking through the woods, and she's by herself. This movie is really quiet at the beginning. There's no music. Ever.
So you have to like
until
check
halfway
your
through.
speaker.
So she's walking by herself and you hear her name, like, Lenise. And then she turns around and we hard cut to a missing poster for that same woman. Her grandma friend walks up out of the night market, sees it, and she's like, oh, Shui, you should come back so we could sing karaoke together. I'm going to go make breakfast for my unappreciative grandson, which she does. And it's like a scene out of an American movie where like the kid wakes up, I say kid, but he's like in his early 20s. Mm-hmm. He wakes up and he's like, oh, grandma, you didn't wake me up. And she's like, well, you got to eat something. He does the equivalent of like grabbing a piece of toast, shoving it in his mouth and like running out the door.
Oh, yeah.
But not before he and his grandmother have an argument about his long-term girlfriend. And he's like, God, I got to go. Leaves. And he left his lunchbox. She then hears her friend's voice in her house. And she's like, well, that's weird. So she goes, walks around, doesn't see anything. Movie's dead quiet. Grandma comes back, slips on mud that's been tracked in footprints in her house. And as she's sitting there, like slowly freaking out, ghost hands come back from behind and the ghost got grandma. Grandma's being ghosted. Okay. Then we meet the grandson, Ho Chi Wei. He's doing his thing. He's a real estate agent. While he's showing the house, he hears his grandmother and he turns around and he sees his lunchbox. She's not here, but he does get his lunchbox and he kind of like is like, oh, that's weird. leaves, never comes back to this, goes, picks up his girlfriend from the radio, Shinny Jean. And we see his girlfriend, which is going to suck for you, Michelle. She's a radio host.
Oh, no.
She's a live radio host in Taipei who has a music show that she does basically all day.
Oh, it is me.
Yeah. They go for a joyride. He takes her to this beautiful, empty apartment. And it's like romantic. He's playing music. They're laughing. They're joking back and forth. He's like, we should go eat with my grandma. She's like, I don't want to. She doesn't remember my name. They're dancing around the apartment. And then he's like, hey, by the way, I've already paid the down payment on this luxurious apartment. And she's like, I don't want to live with you, though.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And he's like, well, we're going to get married. And she's like, I don't want to get married. I've told you many times, like, that's not part of my plan.
Oh, snap.
And he's like, well, but I always thought we would get married and then we could have kids. And she's like, drop the thing about kids. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. And he's like, why? And she's like, it's not part of my plan. Also, how did you even pay for this? And he's like, well, I mortgaged my grandma's apartment. And she's like, did you tell her? And he's like, no. So this is a big thing about guilt. This is going to be the driving guilt of the rest of the story. So they go back and he's like, hey, look, there's a big dinner here. Look, my grandma did cook a lot for us. Grandma's like dead quiet, walking out of the house in a red dress. And he's like, oh, are you still mad at me? She doesn't say anything. And the two main characters here, they have no common sense and they have like no rational reactions to anything that's happening around them. And it's like, oh, I got your food. It was really delicious. Like he's trying to explain to her. And his girlfriend's giving him this like weird look in the kitchen. And she just says like in a dead voice, like, my friend is back and I'm going to go sing KTV. And he's like, well, okay, bye, Grandma. Like, we'll eat the delicious dinner. No response. And then they don't return to this. And this is the beginning of no sense. No sense between these two, this idiot couple. Okay. The next day, the missing grandma from before comes back. But our grandma, the nagging grandma, is disappeared. So Wei talks to the first grandma, Shui. And he's like, hey, my grandma was going to go sing karaoke with you. What happened? She sees his face and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he's like, wow, this is weird. Okay. He goes to work. He gets a package. The package has Shui's camera on it. The camera has weird footage of them walking through the woods and a creepy little girl ghost following them. And he's like, wow, that's weird. Never going to come back to this again. Goes back to his house. And he's like, it's really weird. My grandma's not here. So he goes and talks to the security guard, Uncle Kun. And he's like, hey, could we go talk to the woman who just came back? So Uncle Kun takes him to her house. The door is open and no one's inside. Ooh. And so the two of them are walking around and they're both like heebie-jeebied, walking around inside the house. They have a creepy experience. Then the door flies open. They run out. Way too much vomit. Oh. Hard cut to the next day. Wei, Uncle Kun, and his girlfriend are looking at the security footage of 1, the day his grandma wandered away, 2, what happened in the ghost house last night. Both times they see, as they were in the house, they see after they ran out on the security camera, a little girl ghost follows after them and then disappears. And then when they're looking at, oh, well, let's look at when my grandma disappeared, they see grandma walking down the sidewalk and there's a little girl ghost leading her away. They just go back to work. What? And Uncle Kun is like, there are ghosts here. We see him like out like lighting firecrackers, doing everything that he can. He's like, there's a ghost in that house. Okay. So basically the next day, the boyfriend has a very guilty dream where he thinks he's seeing his grandmother, but he's not actually seeing his grandmother. He thinks that she's back and she tries to invite his girlfriend over and he ends up telling the ghost his girlfriend's real name. He says her whole real name. So now she's next on the chopping block and then the boyfriend gets got. Boyfriend is ghosted. Boyfriend like disappears. We switch over to who is the real protagonist, but I don't think the hero, Shinny Jean, the girlfriend. Yeah. She's at her radio job. She's doing her thing. When, as she closes up for the day, she gets a weird call, turns and sees her boyfriend just dead staring in the window. He's just standing there dead-faced, which to me was the scariest part. The scariest thing to me now, as like a 30-year-old woman, is a man where I don't think there should be a man. So to me, that sucked. Also, something is clearly wrong. And he's like, we should go be with my grandma. Which is like, well, we're going to go to a doctor first. Yeah. Then we'll eat with her grandma. She tries to check him into the doctor. He like kind of disappears on her. She finds him staring into the infant unit. And he's like, why don't you want to have kids? And she's like, I told you just not part of my thing. He's like, why don't you want to have kids? We should get married. We should have kids. And she hears the babies like starting. And she's like, you need to drop this. Like, you're upsetting children in there. Like, this isn't part of my plan. We've talked about this. And he kind of like walks off and she goes to chase him. Then she looks in and she notices there's no babies in the room. He's disappeared. So she finally goes to his house and like Wei is going ham on this big meal of grub, dirts, nasty weird brown stuff, live stag beetles, other stuff. And she finally screams, runs outside to Uncle Kun. slams on the door and is like, Coon, you have to come and see this. Something's going down. They both rush up there because he knows there's a ghost here. He's ready.
Yeah.
They go up there. Nothing's there.
No food.
And she's like, no food, no way, no nothing. The light is on and that's it. So we slam cut to the next day where Uncle Coon has come in and he's like cleansing the house.
Yeah.
He's like in and she's just like passively following him. They do like a blessing where they literally tell the ghost to like F off. And she makes a public announcement on her late night radio station that if anyone has seen Grandma or her boyfriend to call her. The next day, Grandma shows up and she gets called in because Grandma has no other close family. And the grandma is hysterical and she's like, I called my son's full name. I called his full name. Oh my God. Vomits. Again, horrible. Don't know what's going on with that. So Eugene then goes home and she and Uncle Coon outside are like, Uncle Coon is like, there is a ghost that came from the mountain and it is grabbing people up left and right. And that is the problem here. Yes. She finally researches on Google for the first time now what is going on and finds out about the Mostian and all that stuff that I told you before. What she also finds out is that if you get caught in the spirit world, and you light firecrackers or you light explosives, that will break you out of the spell and you'll be able to find your way back. This is very relevant. Yes. That night, while Uncle Coon is like doing his security guard thing, the ghosts kind of cheat and they get Uncle Coon.
Oh, no.
It sucks. It was my least favorite part of the movie, but they like double team him and he has the firecrackers. He's ready, but his lighter fails him. So Uncle Coon gets got. No. Okay. The most random scene in the movie happens after this where Eugene goes to the hospital and the doctors say, by the way, we found this rare moth inside your grandma. It's still alive. Anyway, goodbye. Leave. There's no context for it. But from this point on, we understand that this rare death's head hawk moth is the symbol of the ghost. So anytime throughout this movie, like you'll see moths fluttering around and you know the ghost is here. You're in the spirit world. Some BS is happening. Okay. So we fast forward. She takes Grandma home and Grandma basically says, like, give me your shoes. I'm going back out into the woods by myself, an old lady, to go find my grandson. I'm going to go die in your place because I'm old. And all that Eugene says is like, don't think too much, Grandma.
Oh, no.
She walks out and she says, hey, Uncle Coon, can you please keep an eye on Grandma?
Uncle Coon got.
Yes. And he says, okay, don't worry. And she does not react. She's been talking to this man the whole time. Walks off.
What a giant dummy.
I don't understand. That night, surprise, surprise, Grandma disappears.
Yeah.
But while she's working at the radio station, the plot takes a couple giant leaps forward. She puts out an ask about the moth and gets a strange caller who tells her exactly where to find it. She goes home, finds out Grandma's gone, and decides to join rescue efforts to find Grandma and her boyfriend. But the night before that, she has her first ghost dream where she wakes up and she is bleeding profusely, like between her legs.
Oh, no.
Okay. She can't stop it. It like tries to consume her and then she wakes up and she starts sobbing. But that doesn't stop her. For the first time she's taking action. She goes on the rescue mission and the rescuer gives her 3 flares, explosives.
Right.
And they're walking through the mountain when she actually sees Grandma. Her leg is broken. They carry Grandma away and Grandma is shouting at her because Grandma's no longer ghosted. I think she's no longer ghosted. She's like, get off the mountain. The ghost is going to get you. He's trying to get you. And Eugene is like, keeps going with the rescue team. So that night with the rescue team, she's kind of like shooting the breeze with them. They're like, hey, how do you know to come to this mountain? She said, oh, this old man called me. She tells them the name and they're like, oh, that's weird. Are you joking? Because he's been dead for years. And she's like, ha, because she's panicking. So the next day they go out again and she's falling behind because she's not a mountaineer.
Right.
Long story short, she gets trapped on the mountain.
Of course.
And for the first time, she lights a flare, only to get attacked by death's head moths. So she passes out because it's terrible. And then after she wakes up from that, she realizes that she's in the worst part of the forest. It's the ghost forest, Michelle. Every tree has a dead person in it. She has a flare on, but for some reason it's not working. Then, even worse, suddenly she realizes she's pregnant with like a 1-year-old.
What?
She gives birth on the floor of the woods in a horrible, terrible way. And there's blood everywhere.
Oh my God.
And then the child stands up and says, why didn't you want me?
Oh,
and this is what I think her trauma is I think she had an abortion and she didn't tell her boyfriend.
Yeah.
But that is never said. This is my belief. This is how I've interpreted this. Okay. She tries to hug him. She gets ghosted the 3rd time. She uses her 3rd flare and she wakes up in this weird dream space and she susses it out, breaks out of the dream. She's still stuck in the corpse forest, but she finds her real boyfriend stuck in one of these trees. She cuts him out because she is getting out of here with him when they are attacked by like a whole bunch of Moseans. And they look like horrible little naked monkey babies that skitter with the Asian ghost skitter.
Of course.
And he gets kind of dragged away by some of them. And she gets attacked by this giant one who starts choking her. But she thinks about all of her regrets and she's like, no, not today. She pulls out a fourth flare, explodes the flare on the Mosean, and in a bright light, they all get driven away. And we flash forward to her new life. She is married to her boyfriend Wei, and she is pregnant. And she's very happy about all of this. They live at her grandmother's house. And these images are played over her giving a monologue where she's like, oh, inside each of us there is a forest, and you need to cultivate that forest to find what you really want. And I'm happy to say, I think I've found what I really want. And it ends on a nice, warm family scene where they're all eating together, laughing happily. And on the wall, you see a death's head moth land and crawl away. And the movie ends. So that's the tag along. How do you feel?
Well, I've heard, okay, if you live in Taiwan for long enough, then you hear about 红衣女孩, which is the little Red
little
Riding
girl
Hood.
in red.
Yeah. Who lives in the mountains and will call your name and you're not supposed to look back.
Yeah.
Or she gets you, right?
She gets you.
She gets you. So we all hear that like urban legend, urban myth.
Yeah, that's an urban myth from 1998.
Oh.
So it's actually a very recent urban myth. The video footage in the first grandma's camera that gets mailed is the real video footage that started the urban legend. From 98.
But yes, I was here, by the way, in 98. So it was very scary because I don't do ghosts.
No, it's in the woods.
No,
it's in the woods.
So I don't go to the woods here, not really.
Well, I was interested in this one because for me, this urban legend had a resurgence in 2014, which was the year I arrived in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And something happened on a recent hike in 2014 that caused a resurgence of this myth. And then this movie was made 1 year after that. So this is actually like the highest grossing horror film in Taiwan. I think it's because it kind of like followed on the heels of the zeitgeist. But as a movie, it irritated me because I kept bringing up like the passivity of the main characters, but I cannot impress. Like there are a lot of Taiwanese people who are outwardly superstitious. And then there's many other Taiwanese people who would say they're not superstitious, but the instant a computer breaks, they put a little green guai guai on it. And so to me, I was furious that like these people literally, the moment they literally see a ghost,
they laughed it off.
They don't do anything about it. And I was sitting there like, everyone I know, even me, you go to a temple.
Yep.
There's temples everywhere.
Go
to a temple. Get a priest. Come in here. Uncle Kun is doing his best. You need to get a charm.
You need to get cleansed.
Taiwan has protocols for this, and they didn't do any of them. It drove me crazy.
Yeah, that is what kind of happens with a lot of movies. It's like when they make it so that the characters are not actually behaving the way they should be behaving. Of course, it then threatens your ability to suspend disbelief.
Suspend disbelief. Yeah, there you go. So from that perspective, I found it a little frustrating. Yeah. But like the fear-wise, this is the thing I want to get into. Where does this like fear come from? I think a lot of the fears that we can see here that I do think have like a lot of influence in Taiwan.
Yeah.
The folklore belief of like people always think there's things in the woods.
Oh, totally. Yep.
I've been warned about like a bunch of superstitions and stuff.
Absolutely. We have a ghost month where they tell you not to go hiking.
Yeah, don't hike probably because of people like the Mosean or like the ghost forest that's there. The Mosean are not tied to that. That is kind of like a movie assertion. There's nothing in like folklore that says that that's happening. But to wrap it up, after hearing this, how scary do you think that this film is on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
I'm going to use an extreme scale here. 1 is like almost laughable, kind of a comedy. And then 10 is like, I slept with all the lights on. I called my mom. I hugged my dog. I cried. Like that level of scary.
Right.
Where would you put this one?
Just based on the trailer and based on your summary, I think I would probably put it at about maybe an 8.
An 8.
Mm-hmm. I really don't do well with supernatural films.
It was very good. It hit a lot of the ghost highlights. Don't eat food that ghosts give you.
Nope.
Falling into the spirit world. Creepy crawlies.
Forests.
Little girl ghosts.
Skittering.
There's a lot of skittering. For me, it was like a 4. I didn't find it very scary.
Okay.
But I think that's also because I'm not really scared of ghosts. Would you recommend this movie to anybody?
Well, simply based on the fact that it is Taiwan lore, yes, I would. Because it is hard to, it's weird. In Taiwan, there's a lot of story, a lot of ghost stories, a lot of lore about the supernatural, but it generally comes from another culture. That is, original stuff is pretty cool.
So this has been the beginning of our fall freakout.
Yay.
Please join us next week where it's going to be Michelle's turn. Michelle, what movie are we going to be doing next week?
The Abandoned.
And so we'll get more into that next time. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. I've been your host, Amanda Stevens, joined by my unofficial co-host, Michelle Chiang. Please join us next week for more of Tales of Our Time and our Fall Freakout segment.